Hello, everyone, and welcome to Chapter 6, Critical Thinking and Reasoning. Previously, we've been discussing what public speaking is and what organizational frameworks we should use. Now we're going to be getting into the how we can persuade others. And that is through the big three components: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos being the credibility that someone has. This is through competence and character. We have pathos, which is the emotional path that we take the audience down, and we can do this through vivid storytelling, vivid language, and detailed examples. And then we have logos, which is logic through evidence and reasoning. Let's dive right on in to what is ethos. Ethos is broken up into two factors of credibility: competence and character. Competence is how an audience regards a speaker's intelligence, expertise, and knowledge of the subject. This may be the doctor, this may be the teacher, this may be the well-experienced politician. All of this is competence because they know a great deal about the subject, they've published books, magazines, articles, and as a result, they have a great deal of knowledge of the subject. They have expert power. Then but that is not the only thing with credibility. It is character that also plays a big part, if not sometimes even a bigger part in credibility than competence. Character is how an audience regards a speaker's sincerity, trustworthiness, and concern for the well-being of the audience. Let's say that a politician has been in the field for 40, 50, even 60 years. Maybe not that long. Maybe 40 years in politics. Do they have a great deal of competence? Absolutely. But politicians tend to stereotypically be perceived as lacking sincerity, trustworthiness, and concern for the well-being of the audience. And as a result, that may actually run counter to their competence and their competence may end up hurting them in their credibility, but it doesn't always mean that it will. So competence and character, two sides of the same point of competence. So how do we enhance our competence? First, we can explain why we're competent. I am competent because I have a great deal of experience with this. I am competent because I have gotten my master's degree in communication studies. I am competent because I have been through some of the same situations that you have. So, as a result, I am showing that I am competent. This is a lot of times used in the credibility statement in your introduction. Next, we have identifying. We establish common ground with our audience, this allows for identification with the speaker and shows respect for the audience. Showing how I am alike to the audience allows for identification, and as a result, we both feel closer. And therefore, you're more likely to trust me because you see a little bit of yourself in me. This also shows that you share the audience's attitudes, beliefs, and experiences. Again, showing how we are alike so that you can trust me more. And then, lastly, delivery. Deliver your speech fluently, expressively, and with conviction. The reason why delivery and credibility are intertwined is because we believe nonverbal communication more than we believe verbal communication. Because while I can say all of the reasons why I'm credible, if I seem not credible, I don't seem confident, I don't seem trustworthy, then my credibility will suffer because the nonverbal is believed over the verbal. So delivery is an important part of this part of ethos. So we've talked about ethos, now we're moving on to pathos. Pathos is the emotional path that we take the audience down in our speech. So, what emotions do we want the audience feeling when we may want to make them quit smoking, or make them recycle more, or not text and drive, or that we should respect people around us. A lot of times for our persuasive appeals, the emotion we want to convey is guilt. We want to make the audience feel guilty about some problem that maybe even they have a part in creating, so that we all want to solve it. That being said, it is about the emotional path that we take the audience down, and the quality of the emotional appeal is only as good as the vividness of that path. So, we want to have multiple appeals throughout our speech. The logical mind and the emotional mind work together as a result, and as a result, both can affect us in meaningful ways. So, we change, reinforce, and create our attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors based on logical reasons and also emotional reasons. And we tend to see the logical as better, but we may even be more affected by our emotional reactions. It was David Foster Wallace who stated, "The mind is an excellent servant but a terrible master." And we are constantly moved by our emotions, even when they are not logical. So, we want to engage with emotion. When appealing to emotion, we should never use emotion alone because we need both logic and emotion. When we use just one, what it can end up doing is it can end up creating a boomerang effect, where the audience feels manipulated, they engage in some psychological reactance, where they will not just, it's kind of like the teenager thing of if someone feels forced into doing something, then they will want to do the opposite. Or when they feel manipulated into doing something, they will do the opposite. So we should never use it alone. And fear appeals are only good for threat-effective speeches. Doctors communicate in this way a lot. I know that we don't usually think of it as pathos, but they are saying, hey, if you don't do these things, you will die, or some other negative thing will happen to your body, and that is something that's very important. Next, we want how do we generate this emotional appeal? We use emotional language. This is that vivid language that we discussed in special occasion speeches. Rhythm, um, creating rhythm through parallelism, antithesis. We can use onomatopoeia, we can use personification, we can use metaphor and simile. By using this emotional language and description, that can allow us to engage the audience emotionally. We can also engage the audience emotionally by developing vivid examples, aka storytelling, because stories put us into the action, whereas just telling us what happened doesn't really put us in that situation. And we should also speak with sincerity and conviction. Delivery. Delivery, again, plays into all parts of ethos, pathos, and logos, but predominantly ethos and pathos, because the nonverbal communication is believed over the verbal. Next, we have logos. Logos are an appeal to logic, and it is affected in two ways: through evidence and reasoning. If you do not have one of these, then logos fails. So we need an impactful appeal, but often this is a very impactful appeal, but often overlooked to devastating effect. So when we learn how to use logos, we will be less affected by logical fallacies. But again, keep in mind, logic needs evidence and reasoning. So let's say, let's say you are getting your evidence from very, very false sources, but you have effective reasoning, you will end up getting wrong conclusions. If you have really solid evidence, but then make large speculative leaps that are not reasonable, then you will get to the wrong conclusion, or could get to the wrong conclusion. So we need both. Let's first talk about reasoning. Reasoning can be inductive or deductive. Inductive reasoning is a reasoning from specific instances to general conclusions. So, specific facts, general conclusions. A good example of this is Santa Claus. Why is it that we believe in Santa Claus? I see presents under the tree. Parents tell me that Santa's real. I saw Santa in the mall. I've seen him in movies and TV and music. There's decorations with Santa on it, and again, my parents told me so. So, due to all of these facts, Santa Claus is real. I've reached the general conclusion that Santa is real. What is wrong with this? That all of these facts may not be the most credible, and as a result, I'm reaching the evidence is poor, but the reasoning is sound. Another example is deductive reasoning or reasoning from principle, where we have general principles which lead to specific conclusions. This is used many times in math and science and English. That we use general principles. I before E except after C. That general principle leads to specific conclusions. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. That general principle can lead to specific conclusions. So when I drop this pen, it will accelerate at 9.8 meters per second squared, I believe. So we use general principles, and that leads to specific conclusions. Next, we have causal reasoning. This seeks to establish a relationship between cause and effect, but this is very hard to, number one, prove, and a lot of times it can be a correlation and not a causation. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then lastly, we have analogical reasoning. This compares two similar cases and infers that what is true of the first should also be true of the second, or is also true of the second. This is used a lot of times with court cases, where if this situation happened and this was the verdict, then this same case should also have this verdict. That is where court precedent is set, and analogical reasoning is used to guide the audience towards a specific conclusion. So those are all types of reasoning. Again, reasoning can be false, but also evidence. If the evidence is false, the reasoning may not guide us to the right conclusions. Funny enough, flat earthers and anti-vaxxers have, for the most part, pretty good reasoning. But they get their information from incredibly biased and very false information sources, and as a result, then lead themselves to poor conclusions. So, with evidence, what should we look for? We should look for specific evidence with concrete language instead of generalizations or hyperbole. We also should have novel evidence, making it new to the audience. Search evidence from credible sources. Choose things like New York Times, the database sources, instead of Breitbart and, Wikipedia. Make clear the point of the evidence. You want to be sure that you are identifying why. Why are you using this evidence? How does it support your claim? So we've talked about evidence, we've talked about ethos, we've talked about pathos, we've talked about logos. Along with logos, we also have to consider some logical fallacies. Here is where the evidence might be good, but the logic of the reasoning breaks down. The bandwagon effect is the belief it's because everyone else does it, therefore we should do it too. This movie is #1 in America. So as a result, we should watch Transformers: The Last Knight. Next, we have a reduction to the absurd, or the straw man fallacy. This is unraveling an argument to the point of the illogical and then refuting that argument. This is pollution from humans contribute to climate change because, oh, so you then think that humans are directly responsible for extreme weather like hurricanes and have caused droughts in the southwest US? In that case, maybe we should just do a rain dance. So the man said that pollution from humans contributes to climate change. And then the owl then took that and unraveled it to the illogical, saying that humans cause the weather, which is not exactly what the person said. Next, we have red herring, communicating irrelevant information in order to distract the audience. People died from cancer before cigarettes were even invented. So therefore, smoking doesn't cause cancer. That is just like saying, oh, well, people were run over before cars, so therefore, crushed before cars, therefore cars can't crush people. It really doesn't track. The reasoning is not there. Also, we have a false dilemma, an either or a false dichotomy, where you can either have clean air or clean water. You can't have both. You can either have all guns or no guns. You can't have both. You either have all the abortions or you have no abortions. You can't have both. By having these false dichotomies, it ends up simplifying a subject and is actually very false, because dichotomies don't really match reality in a lot of situations. So we want to so it's illogical. It's illogical to say that there's just two options when there are many others. Next, we have ad hominem attacks. Ad hominem attacks are attacking the person's character rather than the argument. This is saying that this person is dumb. This person is corrupt. Ooh, that's another big one that keeps on getting thrown around. This person is a racist. This person is whatever, a socialist. Whatever you want to call the person, that is attacking the person's character rather than their argument, and as a result, it then diminishes anything that they say. It's basically, the point of it is to try to lower the ethos so much that it destroys the argument. That is a logical fallacy, because just because you attack someone doesn't mean that their argument isn't any less sound. Next, we have begging the question. People only watch True Blood because Twilight was so awesome. Well, why do people watch True Blood? Well, because Twilight was so awesome. But why is Twilight so awesome? Because it's like True Blood. And just like that, we're creating circular reasoning that doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't really prove anything, but it's just that the initial premise confirms it's self-confirming. Next, we have an appeal to tradition or the status quo. It's always been like this, therefore should always be like this. That is not logical, because things can change and things should change due to differing situations. And then there's also the slippery slope fallacy, which is a cause and effect relationship with lack of evidence to do so. If you give a mouse a cookie, he'll want a glass of milk. If he gets a glass of milk, he'll want a nap. If he gets a nap, he'll take your bed. If he takes your bed, he'll take your house. If he takes your, so on and so forth. The general purpose of that was to share that you shouldn't share, communicate that you shouldn't share things, right? So, a cause and effect relationship with lack of evidence to do so. That is a good example of it. We also have other ones. My favorite example of the cause and the slippery slope fallacy is that, well, if gay people can get married, what's next? Dogs and cats getting married? Cause and effect relationship with lack of evidence to do so. Also, this is also very similar to the suffragettes, where it was, what? Women getting the right to vote. What's next? Dogs and cats getting married? Or, oh, sorry, dogs and cats getting the right to vote? Turtles? So, we have logical fallacies. We have a few more. An appeal to novelty. New is always better. That's why we need the iPhone 15 when the iPhone 14 works just as well. Next, we have hasty generalizations. Jumping to conclusions with lack of evidence to do so. This is those large speculative leaps. So, for example, if I say, you know what, if I can throw a pen up in the air, then therefore I can also throw up a large table. That I have this evidence of me throwing this, and as a result, then I conflate it to something else, which is not really right. In general, I'm jumping to conclusions with lack of evidence to do so. Um, Sorry, no, that's actually incorrect. That's more like an invalid analogy. A hasty generalization, however, may be something like the Xbox is better than the PlayStation. Well, why? Maybe I didn't even provide evidence. Or maybe I might say something, the controller is better and therefore the Xbox is better than the PlayStation. Way too large of a speculative leap for me to prove that it is indeed better. Next, we have false cause, assuming that because one event follows another, that the first event caused the second event. You know, my ice cream melted, and then and then a day later I got a sunburn. The first event followed the second. Or sorry. There was the first event. My ice cream melted, then the sunburn happened. As a result, that is a false cause. A famous false cause was um, mother bed fever, I believe is what it was called. Basically, what happened was that mothers would have a fever and then would get ill and die. So, what they thought was that the fever then caused the mother to die. But that wasn't actually, sorry, it was the fever, then abdominal pains, and then they would die. But that was actually a false cause. It turned out that doctors performing autopsies wouldn't wash their hands and then would go see new mothers and would spread disease to them. So, false cause. And then lastly, we have an analogy, an invalid analogy, where two cases are compared even though they are not alike. I throw up a pen, therefore I can also throw up a table. 1 is a number, 2 is a number, therefore 1 equals 2. Invalid analogies. That concludes this chapter. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you next time.